Welcome everyone to the latest session in the Digital Gaming Conference MEA 2021. Today we're going to be talking about Saudi Arabia and its ambitions in the realms of e-sport. And I'm delighted today to be joined by Omar Bataji, who is Head of Communications, Marketing and Partnerships at the Saudi Esports Federation. Thank you very much indeed for joining me today, Omar.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So give us a bit of an overview, just to start things off. Give us an overview of the Saudi Esports Federation, what it is and what you're mandated to do.
So the Saudi Esports Federation is a bit of a special federation, and in its essential role, it is a sports federation. So we basically take care of elite competition, just like any other federation, and also look to grow, the grassroots level of a technical sport. But however, we do have a bit of a larger mandate, considering that gaming and esports is such a new industry globally, not just in Saudi and maybe especially in the Middle East. We move also to catalyze movement within the industry, sort of draw in investors, sort of showcase the potential and the opportunities within the industry. So again, one part really focusing on just the federation type of activity, competitions, and the other part really working to grow the industry.
So what does the esports landscape look like in Saudi Arabia now? How would you kind of describe its evolution and its current state?
I would say in two words, rapidly developing, and it's in its early stages. It started a few years back, sort of online competitive gaming basically changed the gaming landscape globally, and more we've begun to see talent that were competing on a global stage, but were from Saudi. Sort of as a result, the direction of the Saudi Vision 2030, the Esports Federation was established under the Olympic Committee to treat it just like the word says, as an official sport. So looking at that, traction was a bit low at the beginning, but now we're beginning to see positive strides actually across multiple streams of work.
I mean, obviously esports covers an awful lot of different games and different types of games. What are the games that you would say that Saudis are competing on an international stage at? What are the kind of what are the games that you're finding that Saudis are competing well on an international level?
Absolutely, and I think it's interesting. You're one of the first few people I speak to that understand that esports is an umbrella term for all of these sort of titles that go in. But basically, Saudi focuses on developing athletes for games that have a massive global viewership and following. So we already, for instance, have multiple world champions in FIFA, for instance. Saudis are among the best in FIFA. However, when we look at the viewership compared to things like Dota, CSGO, compared to League of Legends, we find that FIFA is just a bit down in the charts. So what we're doing now is focusing our strategy in developing leagues that sort of develop the talent in those specific titles, but we don't just focus on them. They have a huge portion of our investment. However, we do diversify across different titles.
And this is also not just about individuals, though. This is also about teams competing on a global level as well. Are you finding that kind of infrastructure there that Saudis are banding together and forming professional teams or semi-professional teams to compete in these big international tournaments?
Absolutely. It's not, as you said, it's not about the individual, because we do have some excellent individuals, but right now a lot of our efforts go into getting these esports clubs to start working as an organization. They need to move from being a group of people that excel at a certain game to actually treating themselves as an organization with different functions and work, from marketing to finance to, just organizational structure, and supporting them with this. And the Saudi E-Leagues, which we can dive into, is exactly the product that focuses on that area of developing team-based organizations.
I mean, looking at an individual level, you've obviously got Mossad Al-Dosri is probably one of the most famous exports, if you like, in terms of his success at winning that global FIFA tournament. And he's actually now represented by Rock Nation, which is one of the biggest artist representatives in in the world right now, that surely should give an indication of the prizes and the rewards that are at stake, if not only an individual or a team gets it right, but if Saudi as a whole gets it right.
Absolutely, absolutely. Saad al-Dosari, or MS Dosari, as he likes to be called, is actually an amazing player. On a global stage, everyone speaks about him, but what people don't see is everything that happens behind the scenes. It's the likes of tech companies coming, asking to partner with him to provide tech solutions to develop and analyze his game. It's all the sponsorship opportunities that happen, and it's how he has established himself more as a brand with agents. So it's that sort of structural approach to the business side of it all that we're really hoping to develop in Saudi.
What, from an institutional level, do you think is required now for Saudi Arabia to kind of accelerate its esports landscape? What are the elements that you need to put in place to kind of elevate the whole space?
So a lot of the elements that you would speak of are actually being put into place, are actually being studied, but we see a lot of progress in Saudi overall when it comes to just the way the country has evolved in terms of making it easier for investors to come in, developing its infrastructure. One thing that really is not appreciated are the few different elements that help catalyze gaming and esports in Saudi. When you catalyze gaming, as a result, esports sort of grows with it. But if you look at, first of all, a very tech-savvy youth with a high internet penetration, a great telecom infrastructure, connectivity infrastructure, but then you look at that with a high purchasing power market, I think right there you have a nice trifecta that really sort of brought it all together to put Saudi on the top. So what's important is to really make sure that we buffer all of those different elements with the processes on a governmental level and institutional level that help support them. And that's what is currently happening.
So what are the accelerators that you think are required now to really push the gaming landscape to the next level? And what do you think is the Esports Federation role in propelling that?
So there are different levels to these accelerators, and the Saudi Esports Federation works sort of at each one at a different stage. But we look at the likes of STC, now launching STC Play in partnership with the Saudi Esports Federation. That is a major element of bringing a large corporation into the gaming world and really investing there. Another element is just similar to how we have meetings with these clubs, these esports clubs on a regular basis, where we talk to them about their financials. We talk to them about establishing a process, how they actually can look at their contracting as an obligation and not really, miss out on any points of this, how to review their contracts, their sponsorships. So for us, those are two of the main areas we see, but also you can see things like development of infrastructure, things like talking to publishers, reaching out to the already established entities out there, making sure that they're looking at your market, planning to invest, because some infrastructure is owned by the publisher themselves, and it's important to show them that there is a market here big enough that is worthy of their investment, and that's what they're beginning to see over the past few years.
How has the market been enhanced by the restrictions of the last 12 to 18 months? Have you seen a significant rise in interest in esports as a result of what we've experienced for the last year?
It's actually amazing. Two elements of the virtual world that really grew are esports sort of gaming, game content creation, and streaming in general. Everyone started streaming, and the amount of content that we now see online has developed in a way that we couldn't have imagined. But it also gave room to new ideas of how to bring the world together. Previously, in late 2019, we were looking at Saudi Esports to launch an event. And when COVID-19 hit, that event became no longer a possibility. Within a short time frame, we switched that event from a physical event to an online event that really tackled some of the most interesting barriers within the world of esports, such as connectivity, lagging, latency, and all these issues, and broadcasting from over 70 countries into one concise channel that people look at as if it's a TV channel. And that was where Gamers Without Borders was born, first ever esports gaming event of its kind that brought online, that really propelled online gaming and online competitions to a level where it's now taken very seriously.
Now, talk to me a little bit about those infrastructure issues that you talked to then about lagging and about latency and things like that. What were those issues and how were they addressed as a part of that whole process?
So it's very interesting where you see things like, for instance, in any competition, in all official esports competitions, all official competitions need to happen on ground to ensure the same level of connectivity and no one's from different regions. Now, the way you structure these tournaments is the way you work around these. So instead of doing a normal bracket type of tournament, you then do it by region, and then regions qualify. And we see when we did that last year, now FIFA, EA, during the last year has actually then in turn structured their tournaments that way, where they now have regional sort of competitions for the World Cup instead of having it all in a physical location. But then the broadcast, how do you broadcast having, let's say, over 32 players in 32 different places, and how do you take all those feeds into one sort of mixing booth and present a product that the consumer would like? It was all a challenge, but if you follow us on Gamers Without Borders, hopefully you'll see how we worked around that with a interesting idea of a virtual studio, completely virtual. So yeah, that's how we tackled it.
I mean, it seems to me that there are kind of three key pillars to the whole esports industry that Saudi Arabia can kind of build on, and that is the development of talent, so the actual gaming talent, the people that play the games and compete on a worldwide level. There is the game development themselves, so creating and localizing games for the local market, and also the infrastructure around hosting physical games and physical tournaments in arenas. Obviously, that's not been the case for the last year. If we can start with the latter, what are Saudi's ambitions in terms of hosting real-world events in arenas with big crowds? Is that on the agenda again, and how soon do you think we'll be able to see another large-scale event in Saudi?
What I can tell you, Saudi is currently at, let's say, the top, in the top leagues when it comes to MENA region, when it comes to gaming. The ambitions do not stop there. We're on our way to becoming a global gaming hub. That's not just in terms of esports. So I can tell you that you will be hearing announcements very soon and very often when it comes to that aspect of everything. It's, as you said, there are three pillars. Those are very nicely put. However, there's one element that's important within the world of gaming. It's the publishers own the rights to these titles. And this is what makes esports very unique, is that the actual sport is owned by someone. So the importance here is also to show excellence. When you show excellence, you then have the publisher's approval to continue to market and use their product in that way. And that, I think, is a very important element.
You must be very encouraged by the development in places like Qiddiya and Neom and these other giga projects in Saudi Arabia, that gaming seems to be built into their DNA. How are you working with these big stakeholders to develop the space?
Absolutely. We actually work closer than it would seem. We're very tightly connected. There are constant meetings where we're discussing potential collaborations. I can tell you that collaborations have already been agreed on. With Neom, we were the first to sign a sports MOU with the city. Qiddiya has a few interesting things happening down the line. Nothing we can really talk of at the moment, but hopefully everyone will be pleasantly surprised in the future.
Well, we'll look out for that particular scoop as long as we get it first, which is a neat segue onto Games Without Borders 2. Can you talk to me a little bit about that and what we can expect at this edition of the event?
Absolutely. So Gamers Without Borders last year was a sudden event, as I said, that rose from a need to connect people without physically being together. And the great results, we saw $10 million go to charities for relief equipment to help people throughout the last year. Now, we were looking at this year and we saw a lot of developments that help us with our issues last year. And a lot of people sort of felt like, okay, the situation from last year was over. However, when we spoke to UNICEF, to Gavi, when we spoke to the WHO, their main message was that no, in reality, people still need to be careful. And even looking down the line, if developed countries are well off within a few months, underdeveloped countries will still suffer for months and maybe years to come. So, and that's where the story of Gamers Without Borders second edition came to life. It's called Gamers Without Borders, No One Left Behind, because it aims to not only donate another $10 million, but also catalyze donations to these underdeveloped countries to help them recover with us at the same pace and not years after we do.
And you found that the gaming community has really got behind that message and is really willing to contribute to fulfill and meet those goals.
Absolutely. Whether on the professional or amateur level, these esports organizations, the elites, the best from around the world, are donating their time to provide content to get people to this platform, to show that there are links for donation, to show what you guys can do. At the same level, we have the likes of UNICEF, Gavi, that have never worked with a gaming organization or do not like to be related to gaming. UNICEF have now not reached out to us for the second year, looking forward to Gamers Without Borders, the second edition. Gavi and everyone, not only that, we've had organizations that are still, and I'm talking about humanitarian aid organizations, that are still unsure already if they should enter the gaming realm, but they have been talking with us for months, trying to figure out a way and sort of be brave enough to take those first steps. So Gamers Without Borders, the first edition, really changed gaming for some of the most important stakeholders out there, mainly humanitarian aid organizations and publishers.
Well, that's an interesting point, that people are still kind of reluctant to engage with this space. Then, okay, then as we're on this call, why don't you kind of maybe give me your pitch if any institutions are listening in, or big organizations or government entities that are still unsure about this space? What are your kind of key messages to them about why this space is so vital and so important to reaching out to a younger demographic?
Because it's a different type of mindset and market. I'll ask you a question, if I may. I know it's not how this should work, but how many kids do you think aged 16 to 21 are watching UNICEF adverts or paying attention to UNICEF adverts? Whereas when we develop UNICEF adverts on our stream, not only do we have thousands of viewers watching, we can also gauge that they're not zoning out because they're chatting in the chat box at the same time. So we can tell you how many people were actually chatting at that time and cross-reference that with what they're saying, if they're happy, if they're not. And I think that is a gaming culture. It's a part of the gaming culture that is unique to gaming.
And have you found that in Saudi as well, that the bigger organizations are now starting to engage, are starting to see the potential and starting to see that this is as vital a medium as any that are available in the country, whether that's social media or television or radio?
Absolutely. And let me simplify it a bit. It's the same way organizations can sponsor a football match. Organizations are now sponsoring esports. It's just a different channel that esports tournaments prefer to be on. They don't prefer to be on this channel or that. They prefer to be on Twitch, and I think that's the only difference. looking at esports at the trajectory it's growing at, football will be its only rival in a few years.
Obviously, Gamers Without Borders is a huge feather in your cap and probably one of your most conspicuous successes so far. Can you give me some other ones that you're particularly proud of, things that have come to fruition as a result of your efforts, whether that's another tournament or whether that's a particular gamer reaching a global
Absolutely.
level? Give me some of the other high points, if you will.
Absolutely. So as you said, Gamers Without Borders is currently our flagship. It is a global initiative that really celebrates the world of gaming and brings gamers together to do good. However, it's our main goal. We are the Saudi Esports Federation, so we focus on Saudi. One of our most valued and products that give us pride is the Saudi E-Leagues, and that is a competition where you see 5 different titles that we focus on. These 5 titles now have registered esports clubs, official, recognized not only by the federation, but also recognized by the Olympic Committee and the Ministry of Sports. These are clubs that now have relegation and qualifying process to enter the Saudi E-Leagues. And it hopefully will be our most valued product within the next few years. We've also seen the likes of STC coming and sponsoring the Saudi E-Leagues at multiple levels. We have a venue, it's an amazing arena, we have a nice stream, we have clubs that people follow, and we see the difference in viewership because of the followership of these clubs, and it's really starting to form into what you would think of as a traditional league. And I think looking forward that the next 50 or 100 years, that is the product that we'll be most proud of.
So we'll see some of the big Saudi football teams have their own esports FIFA team soon. Do you think that's a likelihood?
That's already happened. We have 2 years ago we started the EMBS league, and that always has the 16 teams of the Premier, the Saudi Pro League. And they've been participating without any interruptions year after year. And now we've actually moved into competitions for all Saudi traditional sports clubs, having numbers within the hundreds of sports clubs that now have developed an esports team. Some of them not as big as others, but it's moving into that space. You'd be surprised how developed the esports scene is in Saudi.
Are we close to getting professionals, full-time professionals in Saudi? Do they exist already? The people that literally this is their livelihood, that they are professional athletes, just as Cristiano Ronaldo is a professional athlete?
Absolutely. I can tell you on a personal note that I know of a couple of our athletes that purely live off their esports career. But what's even more interesting, I think, are the club owners, because before it used to be a club owner that would invest either financially or maybe invest a portion of his time while needing to work on something else that really helps support this project. However, now we're seeing actually club owners that focus only on their clubs, and they're actually beginning to now merchandise, beginning to now sell sponsorships, and it's really amazing to see. It's funny to say this, but imagine seeing football at its beginning when the first couple of clubs started. Hopefully, this is what we're seeing right now.
Obviously, around the world, we've seen a lot of content creators in the gaming space. I'm thinking of the likes of Preston Plays and Dan TDM in the UK. And they're reaching millions and millions and millions of people with their videos of them playing games and explaining games. Have we got that kind of community in Saudi Arabia now?
Absolutely. We have the likes of Banderita, Mr. FIFA, and a lot of others that we see are amassing a massive following. And it's really interesting because the way they develop their content in a very localized way, I think it is what gives them that followership. But what's also more interesting is that being in a region that all speaks the same language, then you start to see these content creators really attract viewers from outside Saudi's border. And that really is what gives them sort of an edge that you rarely ever see outside of English-speaking content creators globally.
I mean, what I find fascinating as well, if you think of potentially Saudi Arabia becoming a home for this kind of content, so you have the traditional media hubs in the Arab world of Cairo for the film and television industry, Lebanon for the film and television industry. Potentially Saudi Arabia could actually own the gaming space.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think people don't realize how close to reality that potential is now becoming.
I've got to ask a question. Will esports become an Olympic sport? And if so, when?
It just became a medal sport in the Asian Games, and that's something that we are very proud of. I think we have been in support of for a long time, because now most of these athletes, even though have been financially doing well, now they can have recognition on a global stage. And I think the Olympics will very soon follow in the Asian Games footsteps, because in reality, all you have to do is look at the numbers. You can never deny the numbers.
Can you give us an overview of the economic benefits, not just to Saudi, but any particular country around the world, in developing a robust and mature esports landscape?
I can tell you, if we look at the revenue globally, over $1 billion was the entire sector's revenue last year. When we look, that was in 2019. If we look at 2020, the revenue from sponsorship alone matched the entire sector's revenue in 2019. So you can imagine how big that growth is, and that's when we're talking at a global scale. It's just the amazing thing about esports and gaming in general is that the ability to obtain a return on investment is much higher than anything anyone has been used to doing when it comes to things like traditional sport or even other activities. It's all digital based, it's tech based, feedback is instantaneous, and the numbers of the volume of the community is just undeniable.
And also, when you look at the demographics of a country like Saudi Arabia, with a vast percentage of its population under the age of 30, this must be exciting in terms of the employment opportunities it can create, not just for the participants in the sports themselves, but the whole infrastructure around leagues and content. Absolutely. And that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And it's exactly, I think it's not just about, so when you look at esports, usually the idea that comes is either I can be a professional gamer or not, but then you start walking into things like talent management, like club ownership. You start looking into broadcasting, into esports journalism. You can start it just the value chain is so massive, and in reality it's not new. It is maybe the replica of a traditional sports value chain, maybe with a bit more layers, considering it is just more digital and provides you a few more avenues of access.
Do you think we're going to see this on network television soon, that we're going to have the main esports events televised on the big regional TV stations?
Absolutely, absolutely. I can go back to League of Legends. In 2016, over 80,000 people attending in the stadium, and over 50 million people watching on stream. I'm not sure what network television wouldn't want those numbers, but esports happens. It depends. You can decide to dice it up however way you want, but it's a bit like golf broadcasting. Playing golf, it's a couple of days, it's a few hours worth of broadcasting, so it's just important to adapt to the audience in a way where it becomes an interesting product to show.
I like the comparison with traditional sports, like the Football World Cup. And obviously the value in those events is actually who owns the rights to them. So FIFA obviously owns the rights to the World Cup. And the rights in this particular space is owned by the publishers. Where do you think we are in terms of an Arab entity or an Arab game owning the rights to something that would be played around the world?
I think it's a really interesting question. It's something that not only Saudi but a lot of countries within the region are working towards. It'll take time. I think we'll see it sooner than we think, but but it's not just so. There are two types, or I at least classify gaming into two types. There is the game that you enjoy to play, and then there's the game that you want to compete in. And usually the games that, unless it's one of a very high profile, well-made game, usually the competitive games perform much better. So it would be interesting to see where which space it moves into first. Is it the storytelling type of role-playing game, or is it more of a competitive battle royale, PUBG, Call of Duty type of game? I think they both have their benefits. They're both amazing products to have. So hopefully, I think within the next few years, we'll be seeing a product out on the market from Saudi.
There's also the other way as well, when you compare it to something like, say, UFC, in which the Abu Dhabi invested in the license holder for UFC. Is that another way that regional entities or institutions can participate in esports, is by investing in and developing publishers and license holders, the likes of Riot Games and what have you?
So licensing is fairly simple and complex at the same time. It's a matter of having a calendar. The publisher has a yearly calendar. It's a matter of buying a slot for the region, owning the rights to do a competition. Usually what publishers care about is making sure that whatever entity they are dealing with is that their product is in safe hands. Once they've seen that there is the appetite, once they've seen that there are the capabilities, publishers are usually more than cooperative, because they also want to provide entertainment and want to penetrate these markets.
So in conclusion then, what are your hopes for 2022 in this space for Saudi Arabia?
I think my hopes, we definitely have a few on-ground surprises that we would like to organize. My hopes is that the world stage and the world situation allows us to do so, because we have a lot to offer.
Omar Bataji, many thanks indeed for joining us today on this session for the Digital Gaming Conference. I hope you enjoyed the session. Thanks everyone for listening, and do enjoy the rest of the seminars.